How Machiavellian intelligence makes you a strategic genius. Imagine a world where your success, your survival, and even your sense of fulfillment depend not just on how smart you are, but on how well you read other people. Imagine a kind of intelligence that isn't measured by test scores or academic degrees, but by your ability to navigate power, influence, manipulation, perception, and timing. This is the heart of Machiavellian intelligence. And if you think it's all about being cold, ruthless, or deceitful, you've already misunderstood it. What we're really talking about is the mind's highest level gameplay, a deep, reflective, and often brutally honest ability to understand how human behavior works beneath the surface. So in this video, we're going to dive into how Machiavellian intelligence works, how it develops, and how, if you learn to wield it, you can become a truly strategic genius in a world that rewards subtlety more than it does sincerity. Here's the philosophical dilemma right out the gate. Is it better to be good or to appear good? Should we seek moral purity, or should we understand that power operates by different rules, and sometimes to achieve meaningful ends we must bend, adapt, and outmaneuver? That's the question Niccolo Machiavelli threw like a grenade into the philosophical world with The Prince. And it's still blowing people's minds today. Why? Because it refuses to flatter us. It tells us that human beings are not purely rational, that we are easily deceived, often self-interested, and frequently driven by emotion more than logic. And once you accept that truth, not as cynicism but as reality, you unlock a new mode of thinking. You begin to see patterns others miss. You begin to understand motives beneath behavior. You stop playing checkers and start playing chess.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
But let's clear something up. Machiavellian intelligence is not evil, it's not inherently unethical, it's simply the ability to see the full board, the social board, the emotional board, the psychological board. It's the ability to detach from what you wish people were and instead study them for what they are. It's strategic empathy. It's behavioral pattern recognition, and in a world where appearances often matter more than truth, where outcomes are influenced by who gets heard, who gets trusted, and who gets chosen, you cannot afford to operate only with idealism. You need perception, you need timing, you need the courage to act when others hesitate and the wisdom to wait when others panic. Machiavellian intelligence doesn't replace morality, it sharpens your understanding of context. It teaches you that intentions aren't enough. You also have to consider perceptions. A good person who communicates poorly, misjudges timing, and misreads alliances may still fail. But someone with a strong sense of social navigation can often win people over not by force, but by alignment, by anticipation, by framing. If you think about your own life, how many times has the most qualified person lost the opportunity because they didn't play the game right? How many times have you seen influence go not to the wisest, but to the savviest? So here's your first real insight into Machiavellian intelligence. It's not about manipulation for its own sake. It's about understanding the gap between what is true and what people believe is true. That gap is where power lives. Strategic genius comes not from brute strength, but from subtle alignment. It comes from reading the room, noticing power dynamics, identifying hidden incentives, and framing ideas in ways that feel like other people's ideas. That's the highest form of influence, not coercion, but persuasion. And it's not something only politicians and CEOs need. You need it too. In friendships, careers, partnerships, negotiations, and even creative work, Machiavellian intelligence helps you navigate complexity where brute logic fails. Now let's ask a deeper question. Why did evolution produce this kind of intelligence in the first place? According to evolutionary psychology, the most intellectually demanding part of our ancestral lives wasn't building tools or hunting prey, it was managing social alliances, figuring out who to trust, predicting betrayal, gauging status, shaping reputations. The human brain evolved not just to solve puzzles, but to survive in tribes. That means Machiavellian intelligence isn't a trick, it's a natural capability. But most people leave it dormant because they're taught that thinking this way is bad, that reading people too closely is manipulative, that thinking strategically makes you fake. But here's the hard truth. Machiavelli himself would whisper, everyone is playing the game. Some just don't realize it. The hidden power of perception, how to influence reality without saying a word. If you want to truly master Machiavellian intelligence, you have to stop thinking that control only comes from action. In reality, some of the most powerful moves you will ever make come not from what you say, but from what you don't say, from what you allow others to assume, from how you carry yourself in silence. Because perception is the silent engine that drives every social exchange. People rarely judge you on facts, they judge you on how those facts feel. And if you're smart, you start shaping those perceptions with precision, not manipulation. You don't have to lie to influence. You just have to understand how attention works and how people fill in blanks with their own biases. Let's go deeper. One of Machiavelli's most underestimated insights was that human beings are driven more by appearance than truth. He famously wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are." That's not a call to be fake, it's a warning. People will always build a version of you in their heads, and that version will determine your influence. So instead of resisting that reality, Machiavellian intelligence teaches us to navigate it, to be strategic about how we show up, to create alignment between how we want to be seen and what others are already primed to believe. Think about it. Every room you walk into is full of unspoken status games, subconscious evaluations, power assessments. People scan your body language, your tone, your timing. They pick up on micro signals of confidence, dominance, warmth, and threat. You don't even need to open your mouth to communicate something critical about yourself. So the question is, are you sending those signals on purpose, or are you letting the default speak for you? This is where silence becomes a weapon, a strategic pause, an unreadable reaction, a moment where others project their meaning onto your stillness. That's high-level influence. You give nothing away, but you say everything. You control not by imposing, but by allowing others to lean toward you, trying to read you. You shift from being predictable to being enigmatic, and in that shift, your power multiplies. Why? Because people are drawn to what they can't fully understand. The most Machiavellian minds know this. When you leave gaps, people fill them with assumptions. And if you manage your presence wisely, those assumptions will often be better than the truth. This doesn't mean you deceive people, it means you respect the power of interpretation. You frame your silence. You understand that being unreadable can sometimes make you more trustworthy, not less, because it gives others the freedom to bring their own expectations to the interaction. Oh, let's apply this to something concrete. Say you're in a negotiation. Most people talk too much, hoping to justify their position, but someone who understands Machiavellian intelligence knows the real power is in listening longer than expected, in pausing after a proposal, forcing the other side to reveal more than they intended. It's in the space you create, not just the arguments you make. People who are uncomfortable with silence tend to over-disclose, and that's exactly when the power tips toward the one who can sit in uncertainty and observe without blinking. This isn't just about social games. This is about being the most strategic version of yourself. Let's be honest. How many opportunities have you lost because you spoke too soon? How many relationships have been strained because you couldn't resist proving a point? How often do you sacrifice long-term influence for short-term validation? The truth is, when you know how to manage perception, you can operate with minimal effort and maximum effect. You begin to create an aura, not in a mystical sense, but in a reputational one. People begin to think twice before crossing you, not because you're threatening, but because you're uncertain. You become the kind of person others feel they must figure out. And that subtle mystique creates gravity. You don't chase influence, it comes to you. And here's where this flips your usual idea of power. Most people think power is about control, but the real strategic genius knows that power is about leverage, and leverage often comes not from force, but from perception. How others interpret your intentions, how they experience your confidence, how they imagine your capabilities. If you learn to shape that frame, you can control outcomes without ever making demands. You don't need to be loud, you need to be clear, intentional, and composed. You need to learn the art of tension, of silence, of suggestion. So, ask yourself, are you managing how you're perceived? Or are you just hoping people will see your true value? Are you reactive, or are you deliberate in how you move, how you speak, how you hold space? Because once you understand that perception is power, every interaction becomes an opportunity not to manipulate, but to lead. This is where Machiavellian intelligence begins to evolve from survival to artistry. In the next part, we'll break down how to ethically use these strategies to protect yourself, lead others, and shape your destiny without losing your integrity. Strategic morality: how to be ruthlessly effective without becoming a villain. There's a moment where every thinker who embraces Machiavellian intelligence faces a wall, a question they can't avoid. If I start thinking strategically, if I begin optimizing for influence and outcomes, does that mean I have to give up my values? Is strategic thinking the road to cold-hearted manipulation? And here's where the greatest misconception of all lives: the idea that to be Machiavellian is to be immoral. But what if that's a false dichotomy? What if being ruthlessly effective and being deeply ethical are not only compatible, but actually, in some strange way, require each other? Let's strip this back. What we often call morality in social life is just a script. Be honest, be kind, be generous. And those are all beautiful things when they're done intentionally. But most of the time, we perform morality reflexively because we were told it's right, not because we've thought through the consequences. Machiavelli asked us to do something uncomfortable but essential. Look at the world as it is, not as it should be. And that act of honest observation, of brutal clarity, doesn't make you a villain. It makes you prepared. It helps you position yourself in a world that does not always reward idealism. It allows you to protect your values in a world that, ironically, will take advantage of your goodness if you don't know how to guard it. That's where strategic morality is born. It's not a rejection of ethics, it's the refinement of them. It's the recognition that being good is not enough. You have to be smart about your goodness. You have to know when your integrity is being weaponized against you. You have to recognize when your honesty is being exploited. You have to be able to say, I will remain principled, but I will not be naive. Think about this in terms of leadership. A weak leader who tries to please everyone, who operates out of fear of judgment, often ends up betraying the very people they hope to protect. Why? Because they didn't make the tough calls. Because they didn't anticipate betrayal. Because they believed good intentions were enough. But a Machiavellian mind sees further. It says, what outcomes do I value most? And what structures do I need to build around those values to protect them? That's not villainy, that's foresight. And if you lead people, build teams, raise children, or shape any kind of vision, this matters more than ever. Strategic morality also asks us to rethink how we define ruthlessness. We associate ruthlessness with aggression, but in the world of high-level strategy, ruthlessness often looks like discipline, like saying no when it's unpopular, like letting go of something comfortable because it doesn't serve your long-term purpose, like refusing to be emotionally blackmailed by guilt or nostalgia. Real ruthlessness isn't about hurting others. It's about refusing to be ruled by sentiment when clarity is needed. This raises an important question. Where in your life are you being nice at the cost of your own integrity? Where are you telling white lies, hiding your ambitions, downplaying your standards because you don't want to seem harsh? That's not kindness, that's fear disguised as virtue. And Machiavellian intelligence calls you to a higher standard, to be brave enough to be clear, to understand that true kindness sometimes requires confrontation, that love without boundaries dissolves into resentment, that strategic morality isn't about doing what feels good, it's about doing what's necessary for you and for the people who depend on you. You don't have to lie, manipulate, or betray your values to play this game well. You just have to stop believing that truth always wins on its own. Sometimes truth needs a strategy, and sometimes morality needs armor. Because in the real world, being good is not the same as being effective. But when you learn to combine them, when you become a person who is both deeply grounded in principle and razor-sharp in strategy, you become unstoppable. Let's bring this into the everyday. Imagine someone is trying to discredit you at work. You've done nothing wrong, you're proud of your work, but this person is subtly eroding your reputation. The idealist says, I'll let my work speak for itself. But the strategic moralist says, I'll let my work speak, but I'll also reframe the narrative, build alliances, and expose this behavior without stooping to it. That's what strategic morality looks like. It's clean, it's elegant. It doesn't just win, it wins well. So ask yourself, are you playing the game of life with only one half of the board? Are you standing on principle but ignoring strategy? Or are you chasing success but sacrificing your values along the way? The path of the Machiavellian genius is neither. It's the third path, the one that holds tension, that balances effectiveness with intention, and that makes space for both power and purpose. Because in the end, the smartest players are not the ones who manipulate their way to the top. They're the ones who rise with clarity, who anticipate challenges, and who win not by chance, but by design. Mastering the long game. How strategic patience turns you into a legend. Here's where everything we've talked about comes together: strategy, perception, morality, influence. But none of it matters, none of it works, if you don't understand one final, crucial principle: the long game. Because Machiavellian intelligence isn't about quick wins, it's about lasting power, deep influence, moves that don't just create an advantage in the moment, but position you years ahead without anyone even noticing. And the key to that kind of mastery? Patience. Most people burn out because they want too much, too fast. They're driven by urgency, they rush into decisions, they respond to attacks immediately, they push outcomes before the timing is right. But the true strategic genius learns to wait, not because they're passive, but because they understand that time is the greatest force in the game. Time reveals intentions. Time weakens enemies. Time sharpens vision. And when you combine patience with clarity, you become lethal in the best possible way. Niccolo Machiavelli wrote for leaders, but his insights apply to all of us. He knew that power gained quickly is often lost just as fast. It's not the people who shout the loudest or move the fastest who endure. It's the ones who see further, the ones who plan beyond the reaction, the ones who can delay gratification long enough to watch the entire board unfold before making their move. Strategic patience isn't inaction, it's restraint used as a weapon. It's knowing when to strike and when to disappear. So what does this look like in your life? Maybe it's holding back in a conflict, knowing that silence now will give you clarity later. Maybe it's walking away from a tempting opportunity because you know a better one is coming. Maybe it's not reacting emotionally to criticism, but letting your work speak over time. Patience gives you space to evolve while others are still busy scrambling. It gives you time to build something unshakable while others chase what's trending. And this is the final layer of Machiavellian intelligence. Not manipulation, but mastery. Not control over others, but control over yourself. The ability to think 10 moves ahead while staying grounded in who you are. The discipline to remain unreadable while staying relentlessly focused on your purpose. Ask yourself, are you playing short games out of fear? Or are you building something that will last? Do your moves reflect your vision or just your anxiety? The world respects power, but it remembers precision. Legacy isn't built through noise, it's built through mastery. And that mastery starts when you stop rushing and start designing. When you stop reacting and start thinking long. That's how you turn Machiavellian intelligence from strategy into legend.